Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So today our group will present about chess gameplay strategies. So now let's proceed to the main principle of chess. So first is principle of development. Development is about finding the best squares for our pieces. Of course, the best square for our piece will depend on the specific situation on the board. In other words, we will try to find the square for a piece where its firepower can be maximized in the current situation on the board. And second is the principle of center control. Most of the action on the chessboard takes places either in the center or through the center. If any of our pieces want to attack our opponent's territory, we will in the most cases need to follow a path that leads through the center. Similarly, if our opponent wants to attack us, he will in the most cases need to follow a road that passes through or near the center. And lastly is the principle of the king's safety. The king is the most vulnerable piece on the board, and that is why it is important to keep him safe. So next is opening principle. So first principle is don't move the same piece twice. So it is vital to not waste a single move in developing our pieces. So if we start moving the same piece around while other pieces are still on their starting squares, we are actually losing time. The only time we should move a piece twice is if we need to capture an enemy piece. So second principle is don't bring our queen out too early. The queen is the most valuable piece beside the king, so we can't afford to lose her. Early in the game, that means our opponent has 14 pieces which are less valuable than the queen. If we bring our queen out early on, our opponent can develop his pieces and attack our queen at the same time. So we would have to waste a move saving our queens when we could be developing instead. So now let's move on to the middle game principle. So first principle is centralize our pieces. As you all know, the knights can control as many of X squares when centralized, while only 2 squares if cornered. And also bishop can be very effective from the flank. However, in the center, they are more mobile and control both part of the board. The same goes for the queen. If it is safe, bishop and queen should be centralized as well as knight. And second principle is to avoid pawn weaknesses. A pawn weakness is something that can give our opponent an instant edge and allow him an easy game by exploiting them. That is something that can turn an otherwise equal endgame into a loss. To avoid endgame trouble, we need to take care of our pawn structure right from the opening and the middle game.
So now we are going to move to the most common strategy of the middle game, which is break open the center. So this is the position of the board black. So we are just move the e4 pawns, and the black just play the e7 bishop. So and now we have the opportunity to play the e5, which are going to open the center of the board. So if the black captured our e5, so we just recapture back. And now what we have done here is we have create an open files. So this is really good because now we our rocks can come into the game before when there is too many pieces blocking them off. So in this time the our rock will not really doing anything. This particular examples is especially good for us actually because the black king is still in the center of the board and we have safely castle to the side. And already in this position the black has to be really careful, and he just make a natural looking moving like castle his blundering his bishop because we have to open this files. And then we have got three pieces again king, and we simply just capture, and now we just win a piece just like that, and all the start from opening the center and creating these files where our rock is now part of the game plan. Now let's move on to the next second middle game strategy, which is the pawn storm. So the pawn tomb is to attack the opponent king with a pawn. So when I mean by a pawn tomb, that means that we have to start the move of these two pawns, G2 pawns and H2 pawns, towards the castle king. So this can be a quite good strategy, especially it's an opposite side castle where you don't have to worry about our own king safety. So this idea is to eventually exchange at least one of these pawns to create an open fire for the rock to attack the enemy king with all of our pieces. So the move is very easy. First we move the pawns to the g4 and the black we move the bishop to the b7, and then we can simply move our pawns to the g7 g5. And sometimes by playing this way we also open up opportunities to exchange pieces like this, and then we can simply target the lonely king. And this how the pawn storm middle game strategies. So the next middle game strategy is the rook leaf. So most of the player consider that rook is a powerful only in the end game, but there is some potent strategies to utilize it in the early middle game as well. For example, in this game, white can play f4, then he can leave the rook ahead of the pawns. And after a few more moves, this rook can be used to launch the king side. After the rook h3, white is in the commanding position, and that's only because we activate the rook to its true potential. So yes, rook leaf is something you should practice on. So this how rook leaf works. And let's move on to the next strategies, which is the smart exchange. So the smart exchange strategy is a very clever way to make an exchange from by trade off our weak pieces with our opponent's strong pieces. So as you can see in this game, so the black bishop is very active and strong rather than white bishop. So we need to find a good strategy so that the white bishop can exchange with the powerful black bishop. So here this is the way how can we exchange the bishop. First move the bishop white bishop to the h3, and then the black will recapture our bishop using their bishop, and then we move the queen check, and then we can take the strong and powerful black bishop. So this how the smart exchange works.
First principle of endgame is centralize your king as soon as possible. The idea of centralizing the king in the endgame will give a big opportunity to win or draw the game. In the position show, white has serious advantage because they centralize the king 3 moves earlier than black. Second principle is when you up in pawns, exchange the pieces. This is very pretty straightforward rule to understand. In the position below what is up a pawn, that's why is it a good idea for them to trade the minor pieces. By forcing the exchange, white will be able to easily take advantage of the extra pawn for the winning the game. Third principle of endgame is obtain an opposition. Opposition is a powerful endgame technique. Is it commonly used to force the opponent king away from the pawns, giving up control of the king square. Position show is the most classical example of the opposition. If it is white turn to move, the game is drawn because white cannot penetrate black position without advancing the pawn. If it is black turn to move, black needs to give up space and loses. In other words, the side that hold an opposition has some sort of advantage which is enough to win or save the game. Fourth principle of endgame is place the rook behind passer's pawn. This is another very important rule to remember. You should also keep this rule in mind when you are attacking opponent passer's pawn. By placing your rook behind the opponent passer, you control the pawn all the way through the promotion square, make it much harder to defend. In the position show, white has placed his rook behind the passer's pawn and support it all the way to the promotion square.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Muhammad Fitri bin Faizul. Today, I am going to share with you probably the best chess opening when you are playing as black. It is called Sicilian defense. In this video, I will show you the most important lines and the absolute basics of the Sicilian. So let's get straight into it. The Sicilian starts with e4 and the pawn to c5. Black's main aim here is to prevent white from playing d4 and expanding his control in the center. If white still decides to play d4, then you can capture and the queen can of course recapture. But white has traded a more important central pawn for a wing pawn. Plus, you also can develop your knight and attack the queen. So it is a better position for black. Going back in this position, white also has the option to play c3 to advance the central pawn to d4 on the next move. But by playing this, he actually takes away the best development square for the b knight. So, as black, you can take advantage of this by either playing knight to f6 or you can play d5 to attack white pawn on e4. So that's the reason why white generally does not play c3. Going back from this position, white usually continues with knight to f3, basically trying to gain control of the d4 and e5 center square. From here, you have a lot of options for your next move. You can play knight to c6, supporting d4 square, or you can play pawn to e6 in preparation for d5 to attack the center. You can also go for g6 to bring out the bishop to attack along this diagonal. The most popular move, though, as black would be pawn to d6. The idea behind this move is to support the pawn on c5, plus it also stops white from pushing this pawn forward. So that's all I want to share with you today. Thank you for listening to my sharing.